Oh, shit! Shit!
Yo, somebody let me get full.
Oh yeah, he got knocked out.
Yeah, he was.
What? Get your hand out of your pocket.
Welcome back, those of you still with us. This week closes out August, so before we look at the worst shootings and the weekly statistics, let us go over the numbers. In August, there were 2,544 shootings across the United States. These incidents left 1,258 people dead and 2,016 injured. That works out to just under one half of a death per incident. There were 117 incidents with 2 or more people killed. On the calendar, the raw deadliest date was August 17th with 57 killed, while the least deadly date was August 25th with 18 killed. Because not every weekday occurs the same number of times, the fairer read is by weekday totals divided by how many times that weekday appeared this month. Sundays had 269 deaths across 5 Sundays, which is the highest average. Thursdays had 119 across 4 Thursdays, which is the lowest. Breaking it down by state, California ended August as the deadliest with 138 people killed, followed by Texas with 120. No state managed to avoid shootings, and no state managed to avoid fatalities. Among the least deadly, Rhode Island recorded 1 death, while Alaska, Vermont, and Wyoming recorded 2 each. Compared with July, August had fewer incidents and fewer casualties. Incidents fell from 3,033 in July to 2,544 in August, a drop of 489. Deaths fell from 1,364 to 1,258, a drop of 106. Injuries fell from 2,729 to 2,016, a drop of 713. Incidents with 2 or more people killed fell from 124 to 117. Despite the declines, the fatality per incident ratio rose from roughly 0.45 in July to roughly 0.49 in August. Also notable, July's deadliest state was Texas, while August's was California. 2 months of data isn't really enough to draw any real conclusions, but as we keep tracking month by month, patterns will emerge and the numbers will start to take on more meaning. Now for this week, August 25th through August 31st. There were 535 shootings nationwide. 251 people were killed, including 200 victims and 51 suspects. Another 460 people were injured. Texas led the week with 27 deaths across 44 incidents, followed by California with 23 deaths in 43 incidents. At the city level, Chicago recorded 13 deaths in 43 shootings, while Houston logged 8 deaths in 10 incidents. For the week's No Shooting Award, Alaska, Hawaii, Idaho, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Wyoming reported no shootings. Honorable mentions go to Delaware, Nebraska, Nevada, North Dakota, Rhode Island, Washington, and West Virginia, all of which had shootings but no fatalities. Now, let us begin the countdown, starting at number 10. Number 10, Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina. Just after 1 p.m. on Wednesday, August 27th, officers responded to the new Dixie Mart gas station, formerly Presto, at 142 Julian R. Allsbrook Highway. They found 27-year-old Desean L. Banks of Roanoke Rapids deceased outside. Inside the store, 30-year-old Anthony Sheeran was discovered with multiple gunshot wounds. He was rushed to ECU Health North Hospital and then transferred to Greenville, where he later died. As a precaution, all Roanoke Rapids schools went on a soft lockdown that was lifted around 2:20 p.m. The Halifax County Sheriff's Office assisted at the scene. Police initially charged 26-year-old Juquan Letrai Rawls with obstruction of justice for actions after the shooting. Investigators say he left the scene, changed clothes, and concealed the weapon used. 2 days later, on August 29th, detectives obtained 2 murder warrants against Rawls. According to the preliminary case summary, Banks and Sheeran had a physical altercation the night before. On Wednesday, Banks returned to the store with Rawls and confronted Sheeran. During that confrontation, Rawls allegedly opened fire, killing Sheeran, and Banks was also shot and killed. Detectives noted that Sheeran was in possession of a firearm that had been reported stolen. Authorities have not released the caliber or specific type of weapon used in the killings, and the motive remains under investigation. Rawls is being held without bond and has an upcoming district court appearance. Police emphasize that the case is active and evidence-driven, with additional details to be released as they are verified. Number 9. New Haven, Connecticut. On Monday afternoon, August 25th, New Haven police were called to the 70 block of Dickerman Street just off Wally Avenue near downtown. Officers arrived around 2:10 p.m. to find 2 men suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. 26-year-old Daquan Hyman of East Haven and 32-year-old Ernest Williams of New Haven were rushed to Yale New Haven Hospital. Hyman was pronounced dead shortly after arrival, and Williams succumbed to his injuries later that evening. Detectives shut down the street for hours while canvassing the area and collecting evidence. Investigators quickly determined the shooting was targeted. Surveillance video captured the moments leading up to the gunfire, showing a group confrontation escalating into violence. According to police, Hyman and Williams had confronted another man in connection with a fight the night before. That dispute carried over onto Dickerman Street, where gunfire erupted. 2 weeks later, authorities arrested 39-year-old Sergio Thomas of New Haven. He faces 2 counts of murder and is being held on a $3 million bond. Detectives say Thomas legally owned 2 9mm handguns, and video evidence confirmed one was used in the killings. Court records and police affidavits described the shooting as especially brutal. Witnesses told detectives that after Hyman was struck and collapsed in the street, Thomas fired 4 more shots into him as he crawled on his hands and knees. ShotSpotter confirmed at least 11 rounds were discharged during the incident. The violence has shaken the Dixwell neighborhood and the nearby Yale community, where students said they now walk with pepper spray and feel less safe in the city. For residents, the deaths of 2 young men underscore the ongoing toll of gun violence in New Haven. Number 8. Jackson, Mississippi. Just before 11 on Saturday night, August 30th, a birthday gathering at a home on Dogwood Trail turned into a quadruple shooting. Officers arrived to find 48-year-old Roosevelt Denson Jr. dead in the yard and 3 others wounded. 26-year-old Zacchaeus Daniel Johnson was rushed to a hospital and died around 4:30 Sunday morning. 2 additional victims survived after treatment. Witnesses said a man wearing a ski mask walked into the yard and opened fire as people celebrated. Detectives later recovered weapons they believe were used, but have not released the caliber or type. Within days, homicide detectives obtained warrants and arrested 21-year-old Jordan Crawford and 18-year-old Mason Pierce, later denying both men bond on 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of aggravated assault. A third suspect, 19-year-old Reginald Hayes, was taken into custody on September 12th on the same charges. In court, a detective testified that dying victim Zacchaeus Johnson managed to write Jordan Crawford's name before he passed, that a witness picked Crawford out in a lineup, and that video of the shooting exists. Investigators also said Crawford left work early that night and that weapons tied to the crime were recovered from the residence he shared with his mother. The defense disputes aspects of the timeline. The case remains active. Number 7. Carmichael, California. Just after 7 a.m. on Sunday, August 31st, Sacramento County deputies were called to the Lance Apartments on El Camino Avenue after a family member discovered signs of gunfire. Inside, 3 men in their 20s were found dead from gunshot wounds. They were later identified as 22-year-old Xavier LaRue Dorsey of Rancho Cordova, 24-year-old Wayne Douglas Doer, and 21-year-old Jonathan Derek Bush of Antelope. Bullet holes were visible on the front of the apartment, and a homicide investigation was launched. Deputies said all of the men involved were illegally armed with handguns due to prior felony convictions. Detectives quickly determined the case began as an attempted robbery. According to investigators, 1 man inside the apartment was confronted by 2 armed robbers. During the robbery, one of the assailants shot and killed the victim. In response, 18-year-old Jalen Davis, another resident present at the time, fired back and killed both of the robbers. Surveillance video and a witness corroborated the sequence of events, leading prosecutors to conclude the killings did not meet the criteria for a murder charge. Still, Davis was arrested on suspicion of felony firearm possession and a probation violation. He was wearing an ankle monitor at the time of the shooting and is being held without bail. Number 6. Johns Creek, Georgia. On Sunday afternoon, August 31st, police conducting a welfare check at a mansion in the gated St. Ives Country Club community made a grim discovery. Inside the Glen Castle court residence, officers found 52-year-old dentist James Choi, his wife Mayung, also 52, and their 15-year-old daughter Grace, all dead from gunshot wounds. Investigators determined James Choi shot his wife and daughter before turning the gun on himself. The $1.7 million property is one of the most exclusive addresses in Johns Creek, and the family was well known in the community. Grace Choi was a sophomore at Mount Pisgah Christian School and a gifted violinist who had performed at Carnegie Hall earlier this year. Her school released a statement mourning the loss of a treasured and beloved student, while classmates and teachers left flowers and tributes outside the home. Police emphasized that the killings were domestic in nature and posed no ongoing threat to the public. Chief Mark Mitchell called it a tragedy that reverberates far beyond the family, affecting the neighborhood and city as a whole. Although investigators have not released a motive, speculation has centered on financial pressures. James Choi operated Highland Dental, a private practice in nearby Sewanee, and maintained a high-end lifestyle. Online commentary has compared the case to other recent murder-suicides tied to hidden debt and lifestyle strain, though authorities stress that no such evidence has been confirmed. Mental health advocates are urging the community to resist speculation and instead focus on support. For now, the mystery of why a respected dentist turned a gun on his own family remains unanswered, leaving Johns Creek grieving and searching for meaning. Number 5. Watertown, Massachusetts. On Sunday morning, August 31st, police conducting a wellness check at a Boyd Street home discovered 3 people dead from gunshot wounds. The victims were identified as 80-year-old Nadia Abrahamian, 35-year-old Karina Satrian, and 31-year-old David Minisvand. Authorities say all 3 lived in separate units of the same multifamily home. At first, the deaths were treated as a triple homicide, but by Tuesday, investigators announced they believe Minisvand shot the 2 women before taking his own life in an apparent murder-suicide. The incident unfolded inside a quiet residential neighborhood just west of Boston. Police and forensic teams from the Middlesex District Attorney's Office and Massachusetts State Police spent hours collecting evidence. Neighbors described hearing screams outside after the discovery, with one witness recalling a woman crying out that her sister was dead. Authorities confirmed that a newborn child shared by Karina Asatrian and Minisvand was unharmed and is now in the care of extended family. Officials have emphasized that the tragedy appears isolated and poses no ongoing danger to the public. The victims were active members of St. James Armenian Church in Watertown, where their pastor remembered them as pious, peace-loving, and undeserving of such violence. A joint funeral service is expected for all 3. For longtime residents, the case has rekindled memories of other violent events in the area, including the 2013 Boston Marathon bombing manhunt that ended in Watertown. Investigators continue to piece together what led to the shootings, but for now, the community is left mourning a family torn apart and a baby left without parents. Number 4. Warner Robins, Georgia. Just after midnight on Saturday, August 30th, officers were called to the Bradford Place apartments on Tom Chapman Boulevard following reports of gunfire. Inside one of the units, police found 2 people dead from gunshot wounds and a third critically injured. That victim was rushed to a local hospital but died a short time later. Investigators with the Criminal Investigation Division and the Crime Scene Unit processed the scene for hours later, confirming the case as a family violence-related murder-suicide. Relatives have since identified 2 of the victims as siblings, 22-year-old Cheyenne Lee and 24-year-old Jermaine Lee Jr. Both were parents. Cheyenne leaves behind a 2-year-old son, and Jermaine the father of 2 infant daughters. Family members said the third victim was Cheyenne's partner, who police believe shot the siblings before turning the gun on himself. Autopsies performed by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation medical examiner confirmed all 3 deaths were the result of gunshot wounds, with 2 ruled homicides and the final A suicide. Authorities have withheld official names under domestic violence protocols, but confirmed no suspect remains at large. Neighbors described being startled awake by the sound of rapid gunfire, followed quickly by the arrival of a heavy police presence. Residents reported confusion and fear in the immediate aftermath, with blinds glowing from flashing blue lights and no information about what had happened. Police have reassured the community that the killings were an isolated domestic incident with no continuing threat to the public. For the families left behind, including 3 small children, the murder-suicide has left an irreplaceable loss and a neighborhood grappling with shock. Number 3. Catonsville, Maryland. On Thursday afternoon, August 28th, Baltimore County officers responded to a welfare check at a home on Wilton Farm Drive. Inside, they discovered a grisly scene. 42-year-old Chantel Sharieff and her 6-year-old daughter Kamana died from severe trauma and a gunshot wound, and 43-year-old Mustafa Sharieff died from a self-inflicted gunshot. Detectives are investigating the case as a double murder-suicide, with Mustafa identified as the suspect who killed his wife and child before turning the gun on himself. Authorities have not released details about motive, but records show Chantel had recently filed for divorce in mid-August. Neighbors reported hearing frequent arguments from the home, though no one recalled hearing gunfire on the day of the killings. One neighbor described arriving home to find nearly a dozen police cars surrounding the block and having to be escorted to his door. Another said co-workers grew concerned when Chantel failed to show up for work, prompting the welfare check that led to the discovery. Forensic teams from the Baltimore County Police Homicide Unit processed the scene, and autopsies confirmed the deaths as 2 homicides and 1 suicide. Officials stressed that this was an isolated incident with no danger to the wider community. For neighbors and friends, the deaths of a young mother and child at the hands of someone they lived with have left a lasting scar. The tragedy highlights once again the devastating toll of domestic violence, leaving behind grief, unanswered questions, and a community in shock. Number 2. Minneapolis, Minnesota. Just before 8:30 on Wednesday, August 27th, a gunman opened fire from outside Annunciation Catholic Church during a school mass on West 54th Street. More than 100 rounds were fired through the windows as hundreds of students and parishioners took cover inside. 2 children, 8-year-old Harper Moisky and 10-year-old Fletcher Merkel, were killed. 18 others were wounded, including 15 children and 3 adults in their 80s. The shooter was found dead nearby of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Police identified the suspect as 23-year-old Robin Westman, a former student whose mother once worked at the parish. Investigators say Westman legally purchased a rifle, a shotgun, and a handgun, and used all 3. Doors on the attack side were barricaded from the outside. Authorities recovered extensive writings and a video manifesto describing a fixation on mass shooters and hostility toward multiple groups. Federal officials are investigating the attack as a hate crime and an act of domestic terrorism. The response was massive and swift. Teachers and parishioners moved children to safety, medics set up a reunification site, and local hospitals treated the wounded, including several in critical condition. Vigils filled churches across the Twin Cities in the days that followed. For a community that expected a simple back-to-school mass, the loss of 2 children and the injury of so many others has left deep grief and a resolve to care for the survivors. Number 1. Cincinnati, Ohio. On Sunday, August 31st, just after 1:30 in the afternoon, gunfire broke out at an apartment building on the 1500 block of Beacon Street in the Mount Washington neighborhood. Officers stationed nearby heard the shots and rushed to the scene, finding 4 people down both inside and outside the residence. 2 victims were pronounced dead immediately, while 2 others, including the shooter, were transported to the University of Cincinnati Medical Center in critical condition. Police later identified the shooter as 26-year-old Samuel Erickson. Investigators say he opened fire with a handgun on 3 people: 27-year-old Bemnet Duress, 22-year-old Eden Adugna, and 20-year-old Fivan Adugna, before turning the weapon on himself. Detectives confirmed Erickson had a romantic fixation on one of the victims and emphasized that the case was not being treated as a hate crime. Erickson died of his injuries 2 days later. The loss sent shockwaves through the neighborhood and through Good Samaritan Hospital, where sisters Eden and Favan Adugna both worked. TriHealth released a statement describing them as cherished colleagues whose dedication touched everyone around them. Neighbors said they initially mistook the gunfire for fireworks, only realizing the severity when police swarmed the street. 3 young lives ended, and a 4th lost to violence, leaving families and a community searching for answers. That was this week's selection. It just never stops. Subscribe for weekly updates on gun violence in America. Thank you for watching and stay safe.